All right, BIC episode number 59. No amateur hour football analysis this week because last week we had the Pro Bowl, so we're not going to deal with that. So we'll have a little bit of general bantering and then we'll talk about player collecting. Yes, we will actually talk about a sports card related topic on this episode of the BIC podcast. Now, I think given this, we got to ease our way into this because it's been a while, and this is how you pull muscles. This is how you damage things. You got to be very careful and carefully warm up because if you go straight into actually talking about sports cards on a sports card related thing, like this is how long term damage is done. Just letting y'all know, we're gonna ease into it. I think a little bit.
All right, I'm stretched. I'm good.
You know, I just had a thought when we were listening to the guitar riff section there. Eric, do you need a new guitar? Because like it was around the riff time of addition to the show that your back started messing up. Did the guitar possibly like did you pull a disc or something down there when you were like slashing out and jamming?
Do some crazy Eddie Van Halen type jumping around and it just threw my back out.
Well, unfortunately, during the intro, you guys can't see what's happening during the intro in the StreamYard. I have the luxury of being able to see everybody's camera feeds during that whole bit, and Eric's head banging and like he was going way too hard. He was going way too hard during that. It was a lot of intensity, and credit to him for the intensity. But unfortunately, at his advanced age, that may not be wise.
It is advanced.
Mm-hmm. Yes, quite.
But people think Brandon's the oldest. I am the senior statesman of this group.
Indeed. Fortunately, every time we have this conversation, Brock Purdy makes another Super Bowl. So, fortunately, it's kind of how that works.
This will be his 37th Super Bowl. Looking forward to it coming up this weekend. And I assume he's going to win his 17th MVP and throw for at least 8,000 yards.
Amazing. So can I tell you guys? So like I said, we're going to ease into the sports card conversation. But can I tell you, so Brandon, Eric, I'll tell you a serious story about the Super Bowl directly. So one of the things that I've been doing in the lead up to it, all these rounds of the playoffs, that I've been doing the watch-alongs on the channel, and it's been a lot of fun to do those. Been enjoyable. Big Sky's been great, kind of joining in and participating in a lot of those. And one of the things I do is I do all the thumbnails. So there's two things that struck me, two things that I saw in terms of the thumbnail. Now I'm not the thumbnail maven that Brandon is. He's the pro. He actually puts in a little. I use Canva and it's very effective. It lets me do a couple of different things. It's very nice. If you're not like super Photoshop savvy, it's very nice. It lets you do a lot of very good things and make it look nice, still relatively speaking. But if you got real Photoshop skills, you can definitely take it up another notch. But I've been enjoying I set up the thumbnails and I set them up so you got the two different players representing the two teams and a couple different things happening there. Now, there's two things I realized as I was making the thumbnail for what's going to be the Super Bowl one. There's just going to be a post game. I'm not going to do a watch along for the Super Bowl. I figure everybody will be sitting there watching the game, so they'll be kind of fixated on that. But I'll do a little post game since I've done it the last couple of years. Two things that struck me. First thing, and I didn't realize this, and literally no one called me out on it. If you go check on the channel and check with watch alongs, every single one of them says 2023. There's a date on them. The title is correct. The title is 100% correct. If you check the title of all those watch-alongs, it says 2024. It says the correct date. The actual thumbnail says the correct date, but it says 2023, which is funny because I have not made that mistake at all this year in any of the live streams or anything I've done. The dates I've been on it. Usually in the new year, it's a little murky for the first couple of weeks where you like try to remember that the calendars are showing. But literally 3 straight thumb. I realized it when I was doing this one, because I was literally using the same template and I suddenly stared at it and it stared me right in the face. I'm like, 2023? And then I checked the others. I'm like, no one noticed?
I'll give you a pass. Because when I recorded the video, I think it was the redemption video. I sat down, the missus was watching it because she didn't know what I had said. And she was, watching, trying to hear what all I said. And I'm sitting there and it's probably, I don't know, over 50% way through the video. And I look at my little name and I'm like, I didn't even spell my name right. So I'll give you a pass. You just got the date wrong. I didn't even spell my name correctly in an entire video. So I'll give you the pass on the dates.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. So one other thing, kind of also semi-related to that. So in the vein of what I was doing that caused me to make this discovery, for some bizarre reason, the week was so long that in my head, and I told Scott when we were doing a live stream on the Big Scott 35 channel, I was hanging out.
You were about to say, I heard you. So,
Yeah, and I had convinced myself that yesterday was Super Bowl Sunday, and for some reason, like my brain forgot. Like I was in the future. I have teleported to the future, to 7 days, and Brock Purdy's 37th Super Bowl victory. Like I'm already there, I've already arrived and seen the vision. But that's why I was doing the thumbnail this weekend. Like I was already kind of doing it. I was like, I actually was working on Saturday night, and I figured, all right, I'll have everything ready to go. I'll set up the placeholder and everything. And then suddenly I looked at it again. I'm like, oh, it's February 11th. Oh.
Again, though, you get a pass because we have lived the majority of our lives where the NFL season was 1 week shorter, and thus the Super Bowl would have been.
It is true. We
this
did have
weekend.
16 weeks. Mhm.
See,
Brandon, you're a
so
thinker.
you've been accustomed to it, so you get a pass on that one too.
Eric, I gotta say, I'm appreciating Brandon here. I'm appreciating the support.
Yeah. And I too will be very generous as you are to me when I make a slip of the tongue or a mistake or may say
you will. There will be more.
I
do your worst because I will turn it in kind 1,000-fold. Go on.
I just want to give you the support that you need right now. Because you made a mistake, and that and people do that. I've been told, and I just want to support you right now in your time of embarrassment, and because I know that is what you would do for me if I ever make a mistake.
So Eric, and I appreciate that, but I will remind you that the only reason that you would know about it is because I literally told you. No one noticed. If I had said nothing, no one would have known. No one. And it was right there. Like no one said a thing. Brandon, the commenters are very good about this. Generally speaking, someone will bring it up. Like if there's something, like, I'm just saying there might be commenters who, historically fact checked us and things of that sort, that nature. But the point is that they catch on to little details. As I said, the titles were all correct. It was the thumbnails themselves that was actually incorrect. But yeah, I didn't notice it. And I literally made the thumbnail with the date and the year and everything 3 times. And it was only the 4th time that I even caught it. And I was like, okay. I was staring right at it for some reason. Just 4 times the charm, I guess. But hashtag YouTube problems. So real quick, I'll touch on one other thing as well, kind of in the same vein. I was actually thinking about this, and I'm trying to decide if I want to do a video about it, but I'll quickly touch on it. I know Brandon was talking about earlier about how he's kind of wanting to get back into making some more videos for his YouTube channel. And that's one of the things that I was thinking about this past week. What's funny is that for the most part this year, I haven't made really a lot of videos. Most of the content has been the live streams and the podcast episodes. And part of the reason for that, honestly, is that I actually put together a little list of different ideas, but the problem I ran into is for the most part, almost everything I wanted to talk about, I either talked about it on the live stream or on the podcast, or it's a more of an evergreen type topic, and I already made a video on it. And as I kind of went through the library, I was like, yep, I already talked about that. Yep, I talked about that one too. And after a while, I was like, do I really need to rehash the same topic again? So a lot of it ends up being almost like dependent on like timing. It's like, otherwise I'd have to be doing a news video, and it's like, I'm not really into doing that unless the news topic I think is particularly interesting and I'm being a lot pickier about that. A lot of it just is like, yeah, okay. And honestly, I end up covering it on Friday. Like a lot of times it'll be like, okay, what happened? The 79 OPC case. We talked about it on Friday. There's no reason for me to make a standalone video about it. It's a 79 OPC case. It's not rocket science. It's going for a lot of money, no doubt, but it is what it is otherwise. I've been finding, though, it's not even a run. Go ahead.
Does that case bring up the value of the country of Canada? Because, like, there should be tons of those cases up there still, right?
Usually, I think it brings up the cost. What I'll say is it increases the price of our various paperweights.
Okay.
We don't use them as hockey cases per se. They're usually used to be as counterbalances. So
maybe?
Yeah, well, like it'd be a really big doorstop, but what if you got a really heavy door? If you got a really heavy door, then you need a more of industrial size doorstop. So that's a more legit use of that kind of thing. But it is increasing. Like I feel like it's contributing to our inflation. Because back in the day, we were able to get these doorstops real cheap, and now all of a sudden we have to pay, premium for it. It's very disturbing. I'm very concerned.
I was just curious because I know you've mentioned many times the abundance of them in the country. So just like,
Well,
it's going for a lot of money, then that increases the entire country, right? But
the thing I think is worth discussing briefly again tonight on this is that we've Carlos, help me out. In a case, what did they factor in how many Gretzky should be in that case?
So you can estimate a little bit. I think Bobby, when he was doing his rough math, is you're averaging just a little under 2 Gretzky's per box. So then you just extrapolate out to get, because it's like 1.6, 1.7. Obviously, over the course of a case, you'll get an even number of them, whatever it is. But you can get 1 to 2 per case. Generally, some boxes will be 2, some boxes will be 1, but you'll pretty much get at least 1 per box. Oftentimes 2.
All right. So how many per case then? Roughly.
So for the case, you're looking at, so it's 48 packs, and I'll see if I can pull it up here so I can give you the correct numbers. I'll pull it up here.
And what I'll do is 12 or 24 box case.
Yeah, since we brought it up, by the way, I'll leave a link to the Heritage auction link if anybody wants to check it out. So at the time of recording, we're recording on the Monday night, we still have 19 days left. So there's still plenty of time left on it. And currently it has crossed the 2 million mark with the juice. So it's 2,040,000 now with the buyer's premium. So what we're looking at here is a case that is, let's see if I can find the number here. How many boxes? 16 boxes. So you've got 16 boxes of 48 packs in this case. So you're shooting somewhere probably in the low 30s to, high 20s, low 30s, 32 if maybe you average 2 per box. Just kind of depends.
All right. So 30 Gretzky's.
Sure.
Okay. And, we discussed on Friday, if you went and got 30 graded 7 Gretzky's, how much would that cost? And between the chat and us, if I remember correctly, it came out to be something like $219,000.
Could be something like that, yeah. It's not like a crazy, well, it's a lot of money, but not like in relative terms, you're getting a pretty volume.
Right. So I can go out and buy 30 Gretzky rookie, OPC rookies, graded 7, which is a good grade for those.
Near mint.
Okay. For $219,000. Or I can buy this case with all the boxes and the packs and everything for $2 million plus, and every other card in there is 10 cents.
How dare you? Gordie Howe's last card is not 10 cents.
There is nothing else of value. The only other rookie in the box, I think, is Bobby Smith. There is nothing else of value in that year. And you're going to spend, so basically you are buying the big brown cardboard box for the case, and you're buying the boxes that the packs come in and the wrappers. That's what you're getting extra, because the cards are worthless. But if you have that kind of money and you want 30 Gretzky's for $219,000, you can go out and get graded 7 versions of 30 of these. This is just an example of not being smart with your money in the hobby.
I wonder what the average pack fresh of today's current state grades. I know the likelihood and the mental state of people bidding on this probably thinks that there's going to be, at least a 10 in there or something. And I don't believe that to be true because
we flat out I'll say a lot of scandalous and, maniacal things on Fridays, 5% less mature. Right. But I'm very, very comfortable in stating you will not get a 10.
Right.
Like you just will not.
Because that's why I was wondering. I wonder what the average. I mean, the 7 is probably a good call, but
you're going to be somewhere in the 6, 7,
8s or something. Yeah.
I expect you to get a couple of 8s, maybe a 9 or 2.
Yeah. So so you can go out and just buy 37s, 30, graded 7s.
But you got to throw on top. You got to pay all the damn grading fees too.
Oh,
But that's going to
yes.
bulk up on 30
Oh, yeah.
cards. So yeah,
Oh,
you're adding a lot of
it's a
expense to
PSA
that.
tax.
So
I mean,
whew.
you send in 30 Gretzky OPCs to PSA, that's the PSA tax 30 times. After you just spent $2 million plus. It does not make sense.
Eric's just not appreciating the doorstop
It
quality.
doesn't make sense.
Like when you can get a $2 million doorstop, you gotta do it, Brand. You gotta do
Finest
it.
of the finest.
Brandon, I am not joking. I am being 100% serious.
Ooh.
You can go up to just about every single table at the expo, Canada's largest card show. And just about every single table will have a Gretzky rookie sitting there. Sometimes stacks of them. This is not a card that you can't find. And spending $2 million plus for the cardboard box doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. But I'm not wealthy. If I'm worth $1 billion, then and I collect cards, then this is a great thing to add to my collection because it's rare.
It's always been an intriguing card anyway, because as you state, the OPGs are plentiful and the tops are plentiful, and it's just the difference of where it was made.
Mhm.
And you know, like I have the Topps Gretzky,
I do too.
it's perfectly fine for me, and you know, but I don't hate on somebody if they want the OPG. But yeah, I get what Eric's saying there on this topic. I figured that the case would go at an insane price just because of the sealed case. You don't see them out there unless you live in Canada. And that's all jokingly, obviously, but it's just the people are looking at it as the one-on-one. I doubt whoever buys this even opens it. And if they do,
They'd be
more power to
foolish.
them.
Well, I
More
think
power to 'em.
so. I'll say this during the chat. Brad was hanging around in the chat, and he was talking about in relative terms, just speaking about it. At least one of the players who were in the running. We'll see if they end up being the one who wins or not. But at least one of the players who's considering or making some bids in that, trying to participate in it. Their plan was to open some of the boxes because some of the boxes have a little bit looser connection to it. They don't care. Their interest is actually in opening some of the boxes, and actually they want to make content with it. They want to record and have that for records and share it and do all that. And then the ones that have the better seal on it, just leave them as is. But some of the seals on them, because it's like tape, so some of the seals on them are a little bit loose. So for them, they're like, yeah, they're going to take the ones that are loose. They obviously have the money, or they're interested in participating in it. For them, they're interested in just the experience of opening the boxes that have the looser tape. So they're just going to get into it and start opening some packs and have their fun with it. Very expensive hobby to play, but if you can afford it, for you, in relative terms, it's not a big deal. That's basically the playground that you're playing in.
Okay, so just other than Gretzky, you got Dave Semenko.
Mhm.
Okay, get Dave Semenko rookie. Probably buy this in $1 box. Ben Wilson, less than $1 box. Ryan Walter and Bobby Smith. That's what you're going to pay $2 million for. Doesn't make a ton of sense to me.
Well, you paid $4 million for what you just showed, right?
Yeah, but that's me.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to confirm. I just wanted to confirm.
I'm talking
because they're going to be getting like
regulars.
30.
So you're saying we're ignoring the commoners, is what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm talking about them, those people.
Listen, all I got to say is, listen, 79 OPC, Gordie Howe, and an 8 is at least $40. At least $40. Like, I think you're downplaying the last Gordie Howe card, the
And
last Gordie,
and Bobby Hull. But
That's
I'd
right.
rather have the first Gordie because I can get the last Gordie for a couple of dollars.
Just lack of faith. Just lack of faith. Hartford Whalers, Gordy. Come on,
I know.
Hartford Whalers. Let's go.
And that's in that, Gordy, how just for fun knowledge, if you look in the background, you can see Johnny Pie McKenzie skating away when he was playing for the Whalers. And the Whalers ended up retiring Gordy's number, Johnny McKenzie's number, Dave Keon's number, and then reactivated all the numbers when they moved to
Carolina.
But that's the last card Johnny McKenzie's on also, is Gordie Howe's last card.
Sounds to me like a legendary card. Just saying.
Well,
we might be bumping up the value yet.
If you're a Bruins fan and you like Johnny Pie McKenzie, he's in the background of Gordie Howe's last card.
The man's nickname is Pie.
Pie
What's
face.
not to like? Just saying. Listen,
he got 2 Stanley Cup rings.
if his nickname was Chocolate Stick, you'd have literally bought all of them in creation. Think about it. These are facts.
That's true.
Mhm. Yep.
Chocolate sticks are way better than pie.
But the key thing to all of this is that, look, these are people playing in a tax bracket we're not in. So at the end of the day, why they choose to do it or what they choose to participate in it, whether they choose to open boxes or keep them closed or, cross their fingers and hope that it's G.I. Joe, could have been anything else. Like, listen, man, I'm not here to judge. You do you, my friends. You do you. It was authenticated by the infamous Steve Hart of Baseball Card Exchange. So, the G.I. Joe cards are still in play. Or it could have been the Pokemon cards that were missing. It could have been the Pokemon.
Strawberry shortcake.
Ooh, what if they're like the 86 Fleer and all the cards are in alphabetical order?
Or they all you open up a pack and everyone, in the packs they all
Johnson.
What'd be more impressive is it was Johnson, but there's no Johnson in the set. It's like, why is this even here? I don't even understand. This is wrong. This is all wrong. I think we've learned a lot today.
You know what I've learned just out of this one conversation and the last few seconds of it? This hobby has gave us a lot to laugh at over the last few years.
Oh,
There's so many memes that have came about just in the last few years to laugh
that
at.
all by themselves would keep us busy rehashing.
So kind of circling back around to the point that I was making with my conversation from earlier, it's that I find myself. So I'll give you guys a little background on kind of what the side thought of it was that I was looking at. A lot of times the YouTube algorithm will show you different kinds of videos depending on what's popular and whatever the case is. I watch a lot of content related to YouTube channels, making videos and all that stuff. And it became a bit of a thing for the last little while. You have a bunch of these long-time big creators that are like, I'm quitting, I'm stepping away, hiatus, all this stuff. And I kind of laugh because I still enjoy making videos as much as I ever have. My issue is that I feel like I've covered a lot of the ground that I wanted to cover. So it's become increasingly tough to either find another angle or a twist or something that makes it interesting for me, because I just don't want to tread over the same ground that I've been under. Whereas on the lives or on the podcast, I can be like, okay, so here's a topic. We'll deep dive into it. That allows a little bit more latitude. And then maybe somebody else will say something interesting that then leads us off into a little different tangents of conversation. That version of the content has been more fun for me because I get to roll with the punches. I have no idea. When we do the Friday Live, I have no idea where the conversation is going to go. Sometimes the chat will throw something out there out of left field and we didn't expect it. And then all of a sudden we're able to veer in a different angle of the conversation. The spontaneity is what makes it interesting. Whereas if you have to structure it too much, I like a structured video, but I feel like a lot of the main topics that I wanted to talk about the last several years, basically since 2018, when I started doing sports card content, I've covered almost every topic I wanted to cover, almost every specific thing that I wanted to discuss at length. Now I kind of need to wait for them to do something, or can Golden light himself on fire? If you light himself on fire, then I will dedicate videos to that. You have my commitment.
Got close.
I think his wife is going to set him on fire.
That's fine. I accept these terms. The point is that if that happens, well, then that's interesting. Then I am happy to devote, at least a 6-7 part series, at least to 6-7 parts to breaking that down fully and completely for everybody's benefit.
Taking strategies from other channels again, I see.
Always. Listen, I look for inspiration, Brandon, wherever I find it.
5% more mature tonight. 5% more mature.
I did
He
not say
brought up
anything
how
remotely.
he's
Bring it
inspired
back.
by other podcasts before. That was
5%
I am
C.
looking. I am seeking my muse, Eric. My
Bring it
muse.
back.
My muse.
Bring it back. Okay, here we go.
All right. Shall we discuss the main topic at hand for a moment? Basically, what we came to is, since we were going to talk sports card topics, now that we've warmed up, I think everybody has gotten themselves properly stretched, and now we are prepared now to address the main topic, and that is going back into our bread and butter of player collecting. And something we touched on towards the end of last episode, which I thought was a good conversation to bring back around, was kind of what changed. So when you were a player collector for many years ago, many moons ago now, decades ago, you could be a completionist. You could afford to do so if you were a player collector back in the day, so to speak. Even into the 90s, you could still do it. Like, there would be obscure issues, and I'll actually share one with you here in a minute that I was actually very pleased to add to my collection. And it's not like a crazy low number or whatever, but it's more of an obscure issue. But that's what you would do as a player collector, especially that involved the 90s. It was looking for like European issues. So using the hockey example, you would look for like the CEMEC World Championship sets. There'd be all these little things that it's like, it's just not commonly available. It's not rare per se, but very difficult to come by. And that was the issue. It was that you'd have to go find maybe a European seller or somebody that happened to import something. And that's how you found these things. So specifically what I was referring to here is that on my Medano checklist, all the early 90s, like the first 5 years of the 90s, I was down to a checklist of 9 cards. Appropriate given the jersey number, but I was down to 9 cards. That was the whole checklist. That's everything that I had left out of the entire first run. And I think that early checklist was about 200 cards. And I had 191 of 200 cards-ish, give or take. So I had most of it. But I was missing the 1993 CEMEC World Championship. And I think I can actually share a picture here with you while I'm talking about it. So folks watching it on the YouTube version, you can see it. And what's going to be funny about it is that it's not even a quote-unquote good condition, but I can't even tell you the last time I even saw one. So this is a 1993 Swedish CEMEC World Championship stickers. So they're stickers. So there's Medano in it, and it's in the glorious PSA 4. I didn't buy it because it was a PSA 4. I bought it because I haven't been able to buy one in any condition at any price.
Right.
And frankly, I paid, I want to say like $30 for a PSA 4 of a Swedish sticker from 1993. Why would I do such a ridiculously stupid thing? Because I have $2 million for 79 OPC money? No, that's not the reason. The reason I did it is because this is one of the 9 cards left on that piece of the checklist. And I have all these years, 30 years, I have been having it on the checklist, and I have not been able to scratch it off until recently. This is my first opportunity to scratch it off. And frankly, I was more than willing to pay it. Not an issue there. Thumbs up.
What does that mean, and how did that happen?
It's all you, Eric. Look,
just did it again.
Eric, you do pay for the thumbs up, even on the pre-recorded stuff. So I think that's a message from the system.
You guys are doing something.
I'm literally showing you my hands. I'm a hand talker, man.
I don't know what that is.
All right, moving on. If you see the video version, you'll understand what happened there. Anyway, let me finish my point here. So my point is, as a player collector, that is a premium piece for me, even though, like, in theory, you're like, why? It's the fact that I've been chasing for 30 years. It's the fact that I haven't been able to find it. The fact that when it popped up on eBay, I was like, oh my God. It was like Eric with the chocolate stick. I don't know what to do with my hands. It was very exciting. So the point is that I found it, and I was like, I happily made an offer, and then boom, they accepted it. Fantastic. And I got it shipped out. It's to ship my cards, and it'll be my next mail day. And I'll get a chance to give a little bit more explanation, the whole thing. But the point is, as a player collector, that's the kind of stuff you'd be chasing after. More obscure issues. That's now into the mid and later 90s, we start introducing inserts that are getting increasingly rare. That is not an insert. That's a sticker. So it's a different kind of thing. It's an obscure issue, but it's not a rare one in the traditional sense. But now into the mid and later 90s, we're getting into inserts. We're getting the lower numbered inserts, case hits, and things like that. But then, so I'll use hockey as an example, but it also applies to football, basketball, baseball, all of it. So 97, 98 was the infamous year in hockey where Pinnacle introduced the press plate into the lexicon of, the player collecting. And the problem is when that happened, all of a sudden you got one of ones, you got the magenta press plate, you got the yellow one, you got the black one, you got this. So all of a sudden for the player collector, you're chasing after all these things. And immediately the moment somebody else has one, so if you got 4 press plates per player in the set. You could have 3, but the moment that somebody has the 1, you are no longer complete. So it became it literally became impossible on that very moment. The moment it rolled right off the line, being a completist player collector effectively became obsolete. It was no longer possible because the moment somebody else had one, you were done. And it would only get more aggressive from there because every time the card manufacturers see something that works, by 98, 99, Upper Deck in their flagship product, every insert that had a parallel had a 1-of-1 version. Every single one of them. The base card had a 1-of-1 version. So all of a sudden you're like, the game's over. You got the base 1-of-1, you got the insert with the 1-of-1, and you got a low numbered insert as well. So, and I can tell you from personal experience, I had a couple of brief opportunities where I might have been able to get a couple of those 98, 99s. There were a few, but again, they wound up in Europe. A lot of these cards wound up. So again, it was very difficult to make those deals and negotiations. I wasn't able to get my hands on them. Topps Gold Label. A wonderful set that we enjoy quite a bit. Eric and I have talked about the Topps Gold Label and how nice they are. Their 1-of-1s look beautiful, but again, another 1-of-1. The late 90s increased the proliferation of it. And then we take it today to the ultimate extreme, our friends at Leaf Cards, and they're multiple 1-of-1s for just one thing. We've got the Reggie Lebanon there that Eric has that has infamously been shown on the channel. But the thing is, there are multiple 1-of-1s in a lot of these series that is just a slight variation. Exactly. That's the one. Yep. But so once that happened, the game was kind of over for the player collector. So that's enough for me. I just wanted to lay the groundwork just to give us a little bit of thought on it. Also, if you guys remember from the other episode when we were talking about it, Brandon gave us a little rundown on the Michael Taylor Superfractor 1-of-1. So appropriate that we're talking about that. Brandon, you want to take it off from here? Player collecting 1-of-1s and how that kind of changed the game on the completionist thing and kind of killed them off.
Yeah, I mean, like as you mentioned in the late 90s, when we started getting the inserts and then obviously serial number cards, and you tossed out the printing plates. I personally am not a fan of printing plates, but as you mentioned, a completionist collector and somebody I'm going to throw out there. I don't know if he does much content anymore, but I used to watch a lot of him, and I actually have sold cards to him because it was really cool to see his collection and the bulk he had built of it. But Tan Man Baseball Fan.
Yep.
He was a huge Jose Canseco collector.
Jose Canseco,
yeah. And he talked about how like he knew of another Canseco collector and how he tried to purchase that collector's collection because he had stuff that he needed. And, I used to watch his content and it was cool to see. But the point and kind of what we had brainstormed about this topic is the hobby today is so far past the years of when you could potentially become even a player like Michael Taylor, who's not going to have, a ton of people seeking his stuff. It's still nearly impossible to have any sort of completionist from back in the day, let alone today, where you have God knows how many 1-of-1s in every single product. And then you have products of products that'll have 1-of-1s. And it's just like, it's impossible to be a completionist now. And I think, and I could be wrong, I don't want to speak for everybody, but I think that's where like the passion of the player collector might have died down a little bit. I'm not saying that there's not player collectors today, but knowing that the potential of being a completionist, because that's we all when we start collecting something, I bought a shirt that explains it perfectly, possess all or possess none. And that's kind of where as collectors we kind of get in that mindset. We have to have the whole list. We have to have everything or none of it. And so it's impossible today. Like, I don't care how wealthy you are. It only takes one person, like you said, to have one card that there's only one of to tell you to go screw, and you'll never be a completionist. So it's literally like there's probably another lemon blah 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 lemon collector out there.
That was a beautiful
Eric would tell
pronunciation.
them
Magnificent.
To go screw, and they would never be able to complete their collection.
No,
So
one's getting my stuff.
I mean, I know like you still dabble and dive into your Medanos. You pick up some ultra modern stuff.
Mhm.
I know you mentioned Big Scott. I know he does Pete Alonso's, but I think most people today have had to figure out which direction they want to complete of
Mhm.
their particular player. And I do think, although, like I said, some still exist, I do think it has taken some of that excitement and passion away from being a player collector because that mentality of trying to go on trading card database or whatever and look up a player's list of cards, and it's just impossible to do. Like what you
Mhm.
found there, congrats on that, by the way. That's awesome. A 1993 sticker. Stickers are tough because what did most kids do with their stickers? They put them
Mhm.
in books. Being Swedish, it was likely not many of them printed to begin with. So you had that, going there. You had to find one that popped up on a platform that you could find it on. So, even in a 4, congrats, it's one to mark off the list. But
Mhm.
Jason Robertson, he's like a modern day guy I collect, and I literally just if something catches my eye, I'll try to pick it up, but there's no way in heck I would even try to get all of his cards.
Yeah,
And
I
I'm
think
sorry if y'all can hear
so.
the car alarm.
No worries. But so I'll go to Eric here in a second because I want to get his take on this as well. But I want to share something with you. But I kind of to your point is that with a lot of it, when it comes to a lot of these player collectors, I wouldn't even say that the passion went away. I think more than anything is that what happened was the ones that decided to stick around they were forced to become more realistic. As I said, the
Mhm.
completionist died. That didn't mean the collector died. That just mean you had to redefine what was a collection that you were happy with. What could the volume accumulator became less of a thing because it was like, okay, look, you can try to be like, okay, I'm going to get like thousands, depending on how big the checklist was. You could be pursuing, and it could be a fool's errand to do the whole thing. Now, it's funny you mentioned Tan Man and the Canseco thing. I that reminded me. So as you were talking about that, I pulled it up here. So I want to share it with you briefly, and I'll include a link in the description to you because if you want to go some old school, go back in time. We'll do a little time warp here back to the late 90s and early 2000s. So I'll share this with you guys. And this is a channel here. Sorry, a website. It's canseconet.com. Okay. So canseconet.com. And the reason I'm sharing this one with you is because this is an old website that I followed back in the late 90s and early 2000s. It still exists, obviously. The domain is still there and all that. And this was maintained by another Canseco collector, another Canseco super collector at that time.
Mhm.
And what happened was he links to all this stuff. It was, by the way, in late 90s, early 2000s, Parlay, this is a pretty nice site. It's pretty clean. It's got a nice, easy to navigate design and everything. And it was Canseco articles, updates on how he's going. Well, his career was still in effect at the time that this website was being updated for the most part. It did finally end kind of when his career ended. And he actually had an email list, which at one point had almost 1,400 subscribers. So like he had an active community that he had built up and everything. But here's what I want to share with you. He had a Jose Canseco checklist here. And so I'm going to click on this. And at the time, it was 2,600 items on this checklist. And it was basically like a text version. If you guys remember the old HTML, you could do the pre-formatted. And this is basically what happened was, and it was formatted in such a way where you could follow it. And this was a checklist that he built for himself of Jose Canseco based on different sources. And the little X on the side was marking them off. And you can see, especially for early days, he's marked off most of this stuff. And there's a lot of obscure issues, 80s issues, Broder cards, or if you're familiar with baseball cards, that's kind of a interesting
The
little
candy bar
avenue to move.
wrappers.
Yeah, all kinds of stuff. So he was chasing after almost everything and anything with Jose Canseco on it. The point that I'm getting at here, so I'm going to skip ahead to the bottom of this list. And as I go through it, through the 90s, there's still a fair bit, a lot of X's still. But as the 90s roll around, look, 2000, the X's stop appearing. 2001. So 2001 here. Jose Canseco did not stop having cards in 2001. But this collector here kind of reached the end of the line. As Jose Canseco's career came to an end, it became very difficult to kind of keep it up and keep it going. But had a whole domain name and a website and a build out and a community and a mailing list and all this stuff. But eventually you get so beat down by the sheer volume and quantity of stuff, including one of ones, that at a certain point you
Well,
just can't keep that train rolling.
did you notice at the bottom there, like not all the way at the bottom, but around the 2000 time frame, there was another element to it all that for the collector became increasingly more difficult. You noticed he had the autograph, the relic, the autograph relic. Those things weren't easy to hit. Like, it wasn't one per box back in the day.
That's right.
If you were a collector of like Nolan Ryan or Ricky Henderson, or was it Ricky? Who was it? It was Nolan Ryan, the 91 Upper Deck ones. I'm trying to remember who they all were.
You had Reggie. You had Reggie.
Reggie Jackson. I said Ricky Henderson.
Yeah.
Reggie Jackson, Nolan Ryan. I think Gretzky had one in hockey.
There were a couple, yeah. I don't remember all
Yeah.
of them, but I do remember several of them.
But those were insanely tough to pull. So, that just threw another element when the autographs and the relics started hitting. Even without serial number, the 101s, those were difficult to get and expensive.
Yeah.
So
I think the key was, though, that as a player collector, you were taking body blows left, right, and center. The 1-of-1s was like a death nail to the completionist. But then the very difficult memorabilia pieces added, like, it just got more and more prohibitively expensive, especially if you happen to be collecting a star player or a player that was at least good enough to appear in enough of these sets that they were getting, some treatment as far as that's concerned. And that's not even to say post-playing days. Post-playing days is a whole other kettle of fish, a whole other beast that we deal with kind of in the current day. But Eric, so I'll pause here for a second. Obviously, you collect a player who's long since been retired, but does have modern cards, does have 1-of-1s now, obviously through kind of the Leaf example we talked about. All these things kind of make it more difficult. And you've even had your own challenges with the infamous Bruins commemorative set. We were kind of chatting about that. Yeah. But that's another thing. But the only reason that got away with it is because it's obscure enough in a set that is I won't say limited production, but it's very specific. It's very niche. And you've got to get it in a very specific way out of these boxes, not in the traditional pack boxes, but these, and you've only got a handful of cards at the end, and that's the only way you can pull. Otherwise, it's base cards.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, it's this set here that we're talking about. And it comes with, 100 base cards every time you buy the box. And then it comes with like 4 insert cards, and the very rarest are the autographs, and they're very hard to find, and there's not too many of them even out on eBay. And the first Reggie Lumlin autograph card out of this set popped up on eBay finally, and the person who's selling it wants $350, and that is just not going to happen from me. I think you're going to have somebody who's got a lot more money than me, who's trying to complete the entire run of the autograph set. But I have many things signed by him. He lives only a couple of miles from me. He's friends with the shop that I work at, and very good friends with the owner of the shop. And if I need something signed, it doesn't take a lot of effort for him to come and sign something for me. There is no way I'm paying $350 for that card. Now, do I want it? Of course I want it. Why do I want it? Well, the same reason all player collectors and completionists want it, because it's on this list. And we want to make blue check marks next to the list, because that makes us feel good. But you guys were talking about the 1-on-1s, and that definitely threw a monkey wrench into completing sets. But the other thing that threw a monkey wrench into completing sets, player set, the player set, is cost. Years ago, if you wanted to collect a certain player, you weren't going to have to break the bank, because $200 insert cards didn't exist. In the 90s hit, these inserts started popping out, and then all of a sudden serial numbered inserts. Not talking about 1-on-1s, like, out of 10,000, out of 2,000, out of 100, out of 75. And the prices for these things started going up. So even back then, if you wanted to be a player collector, you started seeing more money coming out of your pocket than ever before to collect their stuff. Because before they had, in hockey, for example, they had 2 cards. They had an OPC card and a Topps card. So it was really easy. And depending on, unless you had Gretzky, they were very affordable. The 90s hit and everything changed. And then after that, you started seeing, the one-of-ones come, and then the prices went through the sky,
I will add that even if you want to go back to the 80s or 90s, kind of in the same vein as the sticker that I showed off, if you were a collector who was trying to be a completionist, yes, you would have the base, the standard sets and everything. Occasionally, you'd have some food issues, little food issues here and there that would add a little extra challenge, because sometimes it wasn't readily available to the same degree. Maybe it was regional. Maybe it was more of a regional food issue, or a team set, like a team issue set, one of those deals.
And I have all of those for Reggie, stuff that for the Calgary Flames, or OPC stickers from the 80s, or postcards from the Flames, because it expands. When you're a player collector, it definitely can expand than from just your typical card. I mean, I have his game used goalie stick on the wall over there, autographed and all the statistics written out on it. I got, that's not a game used jersey. I'd love to own one day, but I got, a replica jersey signed by him up there. I got 8x10s. I have pucks. I have, you name it, I have it. So it depends on where do you want to keep. I mean, you have that. I know that you've mostly stayed with cards, but I know, like, behind you, Carlos, you got the Madonna, like 16 by 20 back there. He was with the Red Wings, and I think that's autographed, correct?
It is, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think you probably have a puck or something or two of him also, right? So, but you've kept it kind of
probably right about there, or maybe just in the shelf there.
Yeah, so you've kept it small. I've gone a little more crazy.
We got the bobbleheads and a couple of the starting lineups and a couple of things sitting on the shelf here. We got a few that sneak in there. I might have a Mike Modano Team USA action figure. I showed that off in a video.
I am on a list of this gentleman who makes McFarlane figures himself.
So custom
McFarlane figures that are better than anything McFarlane did. And I'm on a list. It's going to cost me $300 to get one done for Reggie Lemelin. And that will be a one-of-one. So, and I've been following this guy for a while on Instagram, and the stuff that he does is amazing. He uses 3D printers. He steals other McFarlane pieces, that already exist.
Them.
And repaints them all, and then adds this and guy is an artist. I'll be happy to send him the $300 because it's going to be incredible when it's done. But you don't have to keep expanding like that. You can stick with just cards. But you have spent, we all agree, a great deal on your card collection. You will go out and you will spend real money on a card to fill that, that hole in the collection. I won't spend $350 for this card that's on eBay right now.
Well, Eric, the secret. So, brief respite for 1 second. The secret is amnesia. I at this point, I have no conscience, because Brandon, I don't even want to think about how much money I've spent on the Modano collection over the years. Like, in relative terms, there is no justification that I can give anyone for the amount of money. Now, there is value in that collection. There is value to that collection over the course of the year. But I've spent a pretty penny, and I'm sitting there. I was thinking about that the other day. Like, oh, how much have I spent? Oh, dear Lord!
I don't think you'd ever make any more.
Here's the thing, though, and this is on a serious note. So, when you hear the people amongst the hobby, and I'm talking everywhere out there,
sure,
there is a point to where you can, and I don't want to discount the fact of the value of the card, because we have to spend money to purchase the items, and we're not, unlimited flowing like Eric. So money becomes a factor. But when you hear the people say, "Oh, it's I collect. I don't worry about the value of the card or whatever else," I find that a bit hazy as well, because none of us want to just throw money and like light it on fire, and just piss it away on nothing. Now, the cards that you're buying, Medano, it's an important thing. The Lemelins for
Mm.
Eric, they're special things. The Taylors, the Jason Robertsons, whatever, they're special things for me. And so the figures do look differently to us versus someone else, because that is things that are more value to us than the dollar amount, essentially. Like, to most people, $250 on that Taylor Superfractor probably would be dumb to them. To me, I was happy I got it at that. So,
Mhm.
when you're looking at your cost of Medano, how many years has that equated to? And how much enjoyment and true excitement? Because that's something I've brought up. Like, I used to enjoy opening wax, but I can't lie to myself that saying opening a box at the price of that box is fun anymore. I
Mhm.
can say if I take that funds and buy cards that I actually want, gets me excited, and there's happiness there. I know you've kind of spoken before about the most you've ever spent for a card, and Eric's sitting
Mhm.
there saying you spent real money, and I'm like, are you calling me stupid, Eric? Because I'm pretty certain I've spent more money on two of my Jason Robertsons than Carlos has ever spent on a card.
No, we're just saying you're insane. That's
Yeah,
a different thing.
he's
Yeah.
saying, I don't ever think you're stupid. I think you're a pretty smart guy, but I think you might be
Well, it's
crazy.
probably wise for you to say that because
Yeah,
given that he's insane, he may
yeah,
just find you.
yeah, and like eat my
No,
face.
he's been saying he's going to find me.
Yeah, but
I
but
don't have to
Eric talks
find
about
him. He'll find me,
Eric
and then I don't need to look for him.
look, y'all can Google this and go find Manos the Hands of Fate and go find the haunting Torgo theme. If you Google this, you'll understand exactly what I'm talking about. Just Google that and you will find it. I'm imagining if Eric ever tried to find Brandon, that's what you would hear as he slowly edged his way towards you. You'd have about 3 weeks from the time he's at the front of your driveway to the time he's within even striking distance of you.
I
In the
have a
meantime,
short
you're
driveway
sitting there
too.
watching. It's like, should we move? Oh, we got like another week. Don't worry about it. We'll be fine. We'll be fine. Let him keep working at it. He's trying his best. He's doing
I
what he
was a
can.
private investigator for a while, and I know how to tail people. And I would just wait for the right opportunity that he's like crossing
Brandon
the
could give you
street,
his home address and direct
and I
you
will,
to it. The point
He
is how long
knows
it'll
it.
take you to get there.
I'll hit him with my car as he's crossing the street.
Well, the problem is it'll still take
That's
you
now
3
on
weeks to
record.
get to your. You still
Just
take 3 weeks to get to your car.
Oh,
So you still got lots of time. Lots of time to prepare and plan. Look, at the rate
speaking
it's
of
going,
which,
you get several orders of crumble cookies before that. Several
Speaking of
orders.
which, like this
Yes.
is a little off topic, but Eric's talking about going across the street. I don't know what has been going on out in front of my house, and this isn't a joke. I'm being in all seriousness.
With car alarm?
Thursday night, y'all were blowing my phone up texting in that group text.
Okay.
I was literally outside waiting for the cops to arrive because I'm sitting there eating my dinner and I hear this loud bang. Go look out front. My neighbor across the street is in the middle of the road. There's a car with headlights on. And then he's like yelling back to his wife, somebody just hit this truck. And I'm like, what in the hell is going on out here? Apparently, somebody was coming down the street, hit an SUV so hard it pushed it down the street. The car spun around, was sitting in the middle of the road, and the driver just gets out and takes off hauling ass, running
Oh, nice.
out of nowhere. And then yesterday, my wife checks our Ring camera, and some guy comes up and hits the Ring camera and like starts talking to us like, "Hey, I don't know if this is your car or whose car it is out here, but this gray car out here, I apologize so bad. I checked it; it didn't look like any damage, but I clipped the mirror on it." And I'm like, "What is with the front of the house and the car is parked on the side of the road right now?" So
Nuggets.
Eric's talking about hitting people. It's a real thing at my street.
So it might just be standard operating procedures. So I want to bring up a couple of things, and then I'll bring us back around to what we were talking about. So Eric's possibly, allegedly, murderous intentions, plus Brandon's local crime spree with cars, are brought to us by MG Collectibles. Why? because I couldn't come up with a cleaner segue. Like, really, this episode, I did not. The good news, though, is we back. See, we had our amateur hour football analysis the last couple of weeks, and now we're back to kind of our element. This whole conversation and the direction it is taken is very much what this podcast was designed for. So we back, and AMG Collectibles is a supporter and appreciated friend of the channel and this podcast. AMGcollectibles.ca, AMG Collectibles YouTube channel, where you can check out the weekly podcast on there. And we'll have another one. And I've already got some images of some fancy stuff that came in the shop. So we'll be sharing some of that in the upcoming episode here on the YouTube channel. And that was the only segue I could come up with because I didn't have anything.
So basically, if you don't like this show, blame them because they're funding it.
Oh, I could see people. Although we had really good football analysis and some questionable picks,
it did steadily improve through sheer repetition. We improved as we went along.
I don't know that it was our best content. I mean, football. None of our teams were in it, although mine and yours had a good chance.
We had a chance.
Eric talking about the Patriots and Refrigerator Perry, and I was like, and Brock Purdy at the Super Bowl last year, and it was like they were probably
every year,
these guys every year, know what the hell they're talking
about.
Every year.
37 Super Bowls in a row. He's amazing.
Yeah. If we're being honest, though, some people would argue that we don't know anything about sports cards either. But we figure we might as well at least go back into that. We figured give it a shot.
Fair,
fair. Figure we give it a go. So let me bring it back into what we're talking again. Thank you, MG. Appreciate your support as always. Appreciate you. Now, one thing I was going to mention, though, kind of talking about what you were, because before we ended up on the tangent about traffic and possibly Eric running people down with cars. What you were mentioning was about the cost thing, and you're right about the relative cost thing. The reason I kind of make fun of it, to your point, is that the collection that I build is over the course of the better part of 30 years. But even prorating it over a 30-year period, I know that some years, like the last couple of years, has been quality over quantity. I find the average price per card has increased exponentially because I'm out of a lot of the $1, $2, $3, $5 inserts and cards anymore. Like I've got most of them. So I filled in a lot of those pieces. Like the base cards that I need for most of his playing days are gone. Like there's no more of those really for me to fill in anymore. I picked them up over the years. So now a lot of the stuff is like, okay, so what is it? If it's post playing days, it tends to be pretty much expensive out of the block. It'll be like some memorabilia piece or something from the cup or whatever. It is like automatic. As soon as you put the cup, you add a premium to it. They quintuple the price just because it's the cup.
So here's a question.
Go ahead.
And this, not to interrupt, but this is something that I was actually thinking about the other day as well.
Go ahead.
And it would tie into your overall compounded cost basis. How many actual Medanos do you have in the collection now? Because I know you have a number.
It is 2,500 and almost 60.
Okay, so 2,560. This number popped into my head, and I know not everybody, shops the same way. But let's just take half of those and say, and obviously your shipping costs are a little bit different. But take half of those and factor in your average $4 to $5 shipping cost, and that alone equates to, what, $5,000-$6,000?
Yeah.
So
I did rough math. I did rough math because I think I was having this conversation with somebody, and if you're going to factor in the cost of a collection, to your point, if you're going to factor in the cost of a collection, you have to factor in everything, shipping. Yeah. If you went to a card show and everything that was related and associated to the cost of acquiring the said items over the course of time. And yeah, I've easily spent 5 figures on shipping and up. Easily. Just shipping. just getting the cards to me.
It's crazy to think about, but that hit me the other day.
So you just start stacking up costs, and especially over the last several years, the average cost per card is just escalated over time. We always joke about the Beckett and everything and all those things related to it. But the running joke is that, if I just take the Beckett value, because I think somebody was asking me, is like, well, would you ever sell out your Medano collection? I said, well, if you offered me a ridiculous amount of money, absolutely, I would. But the reality is, I don't know what the actual value of it would be because it's too hard to quantify with stuff that's rare, the stuff that other people would be chasing after. But the reality is this: it would be probably in the high or low six figures is what it would cost, because most of it you can't replace. I have plenty of one-of-ones. I have some of the rare cards. Now, would anybody pay that? Probably no. No reasonable person would. Why would they? But over the course of time, to accumulate the same group of items, you really don't have a choice, because some of it you just can't find anymore. It's gone. And some of the tougher pieces that I have left are really tough pieces. But even, for example, so I made a big thing about the superscript.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of the more recent pickups. And a lot of these cards, I don't have to guess what the market going rate was, because all I had to do was, a lot of these I picked up on eBay in different places where it was in open auction, and I was winning them in open auction. So the superscript went for $200 US, basically. That is one card. It is a card from a product that is basically a kid's base product from 1998. But that's because these are numbered to 25. So the odds of pulling one of these is extraordinarily low. It's actually an extremely difficult card to pull. That is December 28th, 2023, not long ago, the end of last year, $198.94 US. Open auction. That other people had a chance to bid on it. That is what it cost me to purchase this one piece of cardboard. One. Another $150, and I could have a Reggie Lemon in. But just think about it. That's one.
Well, I mean, you say six figures, like that's an insane number, but you just said you had, over 2,500, right?
Yep.
Put yourself at a $30 average cost basis. You're going to have some that you paid $5 for, but then you're going to have some that you paid a couple $100 for.
Yeah, that's pushing
so
80
let's
grand.
throw out a $30 cost basis. You're at 75,000 there. We just discussed how much the average shipping was going to be on it.
Mm-hmm.
You easily could hit six figures on 2,500 cards easily. Like,
and if you add up the real number that it ended up being, that might be close to break even. The frightening part, Eric, and that's the reason when I started doing that napkin math, we know how much you love the maths. But when I started doing the napkin maths over the course of 30 years, Brandon, I sat there and I go, I might have spent close to 60, 70 grand easily. So as I say, like, I'd rather not think about it. I'd rather not give it any thought.
You say 30 years, that's another perspective to look at. So let's say, just for shits and giggles, your collection total is just under six figures, 90,000, but accumulated over 30 years. That breakdown seems a bit more reasonable, because you only spent 3,000 a year on it. There's people that blow that on a box of Prism.
Yeah, right.
I don't disagree. I don't disagree with you, but you still have to kind of acknowledge that it is patently absurd.
Like, it's
the aggregate. Just think about it.
It's a lot of money, but
$100 grand right now.
Time, it's just the relevance of looking at it in a breakdown of $3 grand. 90,000. That's a lot of money, but it doesn't. Over the course of 30 years, it's realistic. There's people that how many times have you seen somebody come into the card shop, Eric, and buy 3 boxes of the cup?
I haven't seen that, but I've seen people buy just lot. Yeah, I get your point, but that specific
$3 grand, like it's nothing.
Like it's nothing.
So
my strategy, Brandon, is just to keep my collection long enough so that with inflation, that will actually be the price of coffee.
Right.
That's my plan. If I just wait, if I just hold out long enough, the entire cost of what I've spent on the collection will actually be a pittance.
So do you have to bring the entire Madonna collection with you in the future to get a cup of Joe at Timmy's, or what?
I may have to throw in a couple bucks.
Let's see, I was going at least Starbucks, and then I was going to ask, do you get the cup or not? Like, do you get the Stanley or the Starbucks cup, or is that just the liquid?
Well, fortunately, I've got the app, so at least I get the star points. So I might be able to get a free cold brew coffee, maybe one.
Okay.
So that's like a $250,000 value in the future. That's huge. The point, though, really, when it comes down to just bringing it all together, is two things. The completionist was killed off by a lot of these things. That's been a consideration of a lot of the longtime player collectors. The absurd cost. Now, the fortunate part is if you've been collecting long enough, the absurd cost kind of gets spread out over time. But maybe my advice to you is if you are a longtime collector of any player, I don't care who the player is, maybe don't think about it too much. If you think about it a little bit too much, you might be a little bit depressed. It's like, wait, how much do I owe on my mortgage still? Decisions were made. Decisions were made. Don't think about it too much. It'll hurt your head after a while. It's very concerning. But yeah, at the same time, though, all that said, it's like, do I regret it? No, not really. Because at the time that I was doing a lot of that, I'd rather have the card than the money, and that was the decision I made at that time. And I'm clearly okay with it because I'm still doing it, apparently.
So here's a question for both of you, and
when is there psychologist appointments?
No. So you just mentioned 30 years.
Yeah.
And Eric, I don't know how long exactly or when you began your Reggie journey.
1988.
Okay, so an ancient period ago.
Mm-hmm.
It predates the existence of sports like YouTube by at least 30 years.
Yeah.
Would you recommend someone today, if you were sitting them down and talking to them about collecting and player collecting, would you recommend them, if they did not have a player in mind, find a player and recommend them to collect backwards? Like chase down, a pre-existing player? Or would you recommend them starting today and collecting going forward?
Well, you're asking a vintage guy. So, my first instinct, of course, is to, go start way back and work your way up, but if it was a young kid, they may not have any interest in Brett Hull from 1988. All they want is Austin Matthews or Connor McDavid or Bedard now. It has to be very difficult to be a player collector of the bigger names in the hobby, but in all the sports. Carlos, on a star level, I mean, I love Modano, one of the greatest, maybe the greatest American hockey player of all time. I don't have a bad word to say about the guy, but he's not Gretzky, he's not Lemieux, he's not Orr, okay? He's not Maurice Richard. He's not in the top 10 hockey players of all time, right? There are people who are player collectors of Wayne Gretzky. I mean, and have millions invested in it. Mm-hmm. Carlos picked somebody that is a class B star, and his stuff is much more affordable. All right. I picked a class C star, one all-star game, one Canada Cup, Jennings Trophy, long career. His stuff is very affordable.
And by the way, when he said affordable, I'm going to add the air quotes on that. Affordable, as we discussed already in the last segment, is all relative. But yes, go on.
You're right. In relativity. So
yes,
have a kid say, I want to be a player collector of Connor McDavid. My first question is how much do you make a year? Because it's going to cost you a ton. So the first thing I would do is say, whatever sport you like and whatever team you like, find like not the superstar of the team, but like the grit guy of the team. The guy that you really admire and enjoy, and he's the heart of the team. And collect that player, because that is something you may have more fun in collecting, and it's more affordable. But
I think it's reasonable advice, but I will throw something in here just to throw a little bit of a wrinkle in it that also plays into the theme of this discussion for tonight.
Yeah.
Part of the discussion is that we basically we could semi-dub this title the folly of player collecting in the current age. But here's what I would throw at you, and this is what I think also the irony of a lot of what we talked about tonight. The big numbers and everything that we talked about was because of the volume thing. It's because in the collection that I'm talking about over the course of 30 years. I'm talking about the course of, pushing 2,600 cards. Like, and it's a lot. Like, I have a 1,600 count box that's just stuff from the cup. So it's like, and every single one of those singles tend to be more expensive. They brought the average up. Like that box brings the average way up. And I've even got some National Treasures card during the brief run that Panini was in hockey. So like brings the average up. All that's very expensive stuff. The point though that I would throw out there, and the important thing, what a player collector means now, because of all the things that we just talked about in this discussion, has changed. If I was starting over again, I would not do the Mike Modano collection the way that I did it originally. I would not be seeking volume. Because as much as I've enjoyed building the collection, I love the totality of the collection and the breadth of the collection. Because I've got stuff sitting in Z folios, and I can basically show you the entire 1990s through Modano cards. I can show you inserts, subsets, all kinds of. I can flip through the Z folios and show you a bunch of the different stuff, and I can reference it. It's almost like I got my own personal library of the 1990s inserts and parallels and everything. I can show you everything almost, within reason, a lot of it. But like, if I was going to do a player collection today, I'd be a lot closer to kind of what I do with Soto or what I do with I pick and choose my pieces. I'm not trying to get everything. I'll go find something like this. This is an on-card autograph here. It's got a little refractor shine to it. It's a die cut. It's a cool looking card. Global impact. It's all, or, my fathers. When I go over there, I'm looking for something very specific. I don't want all of them. I'm interested in certain specific pieces. So using the Connor McDavid example, Eric says, yeah, you could do that. I'm not saying no. But if you have your heart set on Connor McDavid, I wouldn't necessarily dissuade you. I might just be like, okay, if that's what you want to do, then maybe adopt the approach of measure twice or measure 3 times or measure 4 times and cut once. You're not going to have a 5,000 card collection, but you, over the course of time, if you're willing to dole it out in pieces and you want to put the funds together and be very selective of the pieces you're adding, you could put together a phenomenal 5 or 10 card collection that would be impressive over a course of time. It wouldn't be like over the course of a week. It might take you a couple of years. But what if, instead of a 5,000 card collection, what if you had a 10 or 15 card Connor McDavid collection, but every single piece is meaningful, every single piece is nice, and you've hand selected and hand picked it and found the right opportunities, and you were able to build that? That's still a great collection to me. Nothing wrong with that.
So it's interesting how you both answered, but then kind of almost went the same, a similar direction. But Eric, when he mentioned McDavid, and this is something, and I was just curious to see what your opinions are, like what you would advise them, because we discussed in this, throughout this episode of, again, the completionist is pretty much gone. You're not going to pick a player today and complete a checklist of every card of that player. That's not there. And I asked this question because we talked about you doing 30 years of Modano, and obviously Modano has gotten more expensive than back in the 90s when you were buying those cards. If you went to go backwards now, it's going to be more difficult to find a lot of the cards because they're tucked in collections. The prices are up. You're going to spend a lot more money because those have now increased throughout their existence. So that was like something I was curious. But then when Eric mentioned McDavid and said he wouldn't suggest McDavid, especially to a young kid, and I'm looking at it kind of in a different light. I would probably tell a young kid, pick their player, and I probably would go even as far as, especially if they were young, to work on a volume collection of that player, because they're not going to get the cup. They're not going to get, high-end autographs or everything. But there is a lot of stuff out there like the Dazzlers or other little, shiny, sparkly inserts that are only a couple bucks a piece that you could put into a binder and gravitate a kid into collecting and chasing down their favorite player on a budget. Now, is it going to be the best bang for your buck long term? Maybe not. But are we investing, or are we in collecting? And so that's kind of where I was thinking on it, as to grab a guy today and then not necessarily go after your cups or your SP authentic, future watches and all of that stuff, but build a collection that can be enjoyed at a reasonable price. Since we're not going to complete everything anyway, find the cards that you like, get on ComC or whoever and look up, cards that are cool looking, got cool images, they're reasonably priced, and you know, curate a collection that way.
I think you can definitely. I think it's an approach. Look, I think you can take the multiple of those approaches and make them work for you. It's just a matter of what you're trying to accomplish. I think the only reason that I took the angle that I took on it is that as time goes on, I'm less inclined to have volume of stuff just in general. I just don't want as much stuff. Just now at this point, I almost feel like I have to kind of think of ways to get rid of some of the stuff. It's like I want less, not more. The Monero collection is going to stay intact because I've already put in a lot of time, energy, and effort into it, into building it up. But I would love to have been able to curate it a little bit more particularly had I had the choice. At this point, I'm kind of following the checklist. The playing days is what it is. The good news is it's locked in. But you could 100% do what you're talking about. You could have a Z folio and fill it in. I just think at this point the base card doesn't do much for me. I think that's what it is. Kind of from a player collecting standpoint, like at the time that I was building up that collection, I needed a ton of base cards to fill in all these gaps that I had in it. Today I kind of want to be picky and choosy. I want to have individual pieces that I appreciate more instead of a volume of pieces that get kind of lost in the shuffle. Because after a while, I'd be like, even if your scenario you're talking about, I say, oh, pick a bunch of cards that look cool. Well, you pick 10 cards that look cool. That's going to be pretty easy to kind of look at and really pay attention to. If you got 50 or 100 cards that look cool, after a while, they all kind of get lost in the sauce. So it's just, I guess, depending on the approach you're taking and how much time and energy you're willing to take to appreciate. If you can build a collection of a couple hundred cards and you're still appreciating each one of those cards as you're adding them in, then you're good. It doesn't matter. Then forget everything I said, and I think you're solid. But I think a lot of us do, as we add volume, it gets a little bit trickier for us to either appreciate what we already have or pay attention to it as much as you're adding more stuff. Because then the new thing becomes a thing that our eyes fixate on, even if it doesn't have to be expensive. It can be $5 or $10 cards, but as the new stuff comes in, it's the new hotness. You're paying attention to it a lot closer. Well, what about the other 200 cards that are already sitting in the collection?
And
or 500 or whatever.
That's exactly where, like, I sat back, reflected on things, and changed everything that I essentially had let myself get into over the past couple of years, because I haven't bought a ton of cards last year or this year so far, and I have been reflecting back on and appreciating the stuff that I had, but then also, you know, putting together the binders and that sort of thing to allow me to appreciate even those smaller cards. Because when I had made that one ComC order, I don't know, a year ago or whatever it was, there was some Ovechkins and stuff like that in there. And that's kind of where I was looking at things, and there's some cool, cheap cards out there. They're not going to make you rich. They're not investments, but they're awesome collector pieces that, the photography, they got some shine to them. They might be die cut or whatever, and I think those are pretty dang fun as well. So, again, this was no right or wrong answer. I was just curious to see what y'all's take would be on it.
No, I think that's fair. So, Eric, you
And we
want to
know
add
Eric
anything
wants
else
to go into the grid.
Oh, he's going for it. So, Eric, you want to add anything here as we wind her down? Any thoughts?
I definitely see, Brandon's point of view on that. It makes a ton of sense. And not everybody, and again, like he said, because it's impossible anyway, pretty much. Not everybody has to be a completionist. And there's nothing wrong with enjoying a player and collecting whatever you can from them, like I do with Bobby or Gordie Howe. I'm a player collector of them, but I can't afford everything that they have. I'll never have their rookie cards unless I hit the lottery. I don't chase every single or auto card and how auto card because it gets ridiculous. I try to stick to their playing days that I can afford in the condition that I can afford. But that's something I really enjoy. It's not so much of a mission. As a quote completionist, which we kind of started talking about, that mindset. I'm trying to get every single thing that has Reggie Lemlin's name and likeness on it, from magazines to cards to equipment to autographs to everything that has his name on it. And if that is what you want to do, you better have deep pockets if you're picking a superstar, especially nowadays. You can't even go back to vintage and get a base card from 1982 that's only going to cost you $5. I mean, the first thing you have to deal with is with Connor Bedard is you got the draft day card that already came out. That's hundreds and hundreds of dollars, and now we're all waiting for Young Guns, which is going to be thousands, and then it's just everything's going to be expensive. So I would just suggest, especially to a younger person, that if they wanted to be a completionist, find that lesser known player that really meant something to you or means something to you, that maybe already has a long career and plenty of things out there to go after that's affordable for you. That's the difference of being a player collector versus a completionist. I can't be a completionist with Bobby Orr. I don't have that kind of income.
Or alternatively, don't be a completionist. Like that's kind of my take on it at this point. Is like I wouldn't advocate for it at this point. This is what I'm getting at.
I think that exactly. I think we all agree on that because it's pretty much impossible anyway.
Yeah, but it's one of those things where it's like unless having the volume gives you enjoyment, like if that honestly gives you enjoyment and you like seeing just the count go up and that excites you, then fantastic. Then I think that's great.
I love marking these little blue squares off. I love it.
Yeah. I just found that there can be an enjoyment in being a little bit more selective about your pieces. Again, but when we're talking about kids, also don't forget we're talking about different age levels. Because now, if we saw anything from the boom, the Pelican kids have more money than we do.
I know it's not just
so honestly, our collections are peasant collections compared to the Pelican kids. So.
Yeah, but they don't.
I mean, they have the Pelican, and I went to Harbor Freight to get the. I don't even know what they sell there.
A lunchbox with a thermo in it. You take out the thermo and hey, I got some space.
But those kids that came out with all the money, they were mini investors, which was great. And I think, and they had to work hard, and it taught them about money. And I think that was healthy for a lot of those kids, especially during the pandemic when they weren't going to school and they couldn't see their friends or whatever, so they kept their mind sharp and did other things. But how many of those kids are still doing that? And how many of them actually are collectors? And how many of them are specific player collectors? Because they'd open up that Pelican case and they'd have one of everybody. They didn't have an entire case full of Kobe's, a entire case full of Jordans, a entire case full of McDavids. They had a Kobe, a McDavid, a Jordan, a LeBron. I mean, it was insane what these kids were carrying around in boxes around shows. And it's like, you're 12. You have $12,000 worth of cards in this box that you're lugging around, and you're 12 years old. It was a little crazy.
Do you see all of the teenagers with the Bobby Orr rookies?
Yeah, I've never mugged anybody in my life, but if I see a young kid walking around with a Bobby Orr rookie, I'm going to contemplate the idea.
For legal purposes, Eric
will have cookies.
Yeah, it's like Eric. That's going to be that's his defense in case he gets caught. It's like it was the cookies that made me do it. The cookies made me do it.
Power over me. if some 12-year-old's walking around with an ore rookie and I'm stuck with this thing sitting on my desk, I'm gonna lose my mind. I'll plead insanity at the trial.
We got enough material. You probably could some
Yeah.
insanity. It's like, just tell him how many times Brock Purdy was in the Super Bowl, and they'll be like, this
37.
dude's off. He's off.
37.
It's done. It's done.
37
Curtains.
times.
There you go. On that bombshell, I think we'll wind her down on this episode. We stretched our legs back to talk a little sports card related topics, so good stuff on that. We'll be back with some other different topics related to it as we wind into it. And also we'll see exactly who ended up winning. Did Brock Purdy win his 37th Super Bowl for Eric?
Yes, of course he will.
So that's a thing. Or does Mahomie hang in there? Does the Taylor Swift prophecy come to fruition? Who knows? We'll have to find. We'll find that out shortly, in short order. So otherwise, more videos coming up on the channel. Live streams on Fridays at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where we're at least the bare minimum 5% less mature than we are here. So Eric Sanderson D'Or, you can check him out on Instagram there. Brandon, Bobbles and Ball Cards, and 540 Flips if you want to check out the flipping content. You can check out there. Also, again, thanks AMG Collectibles for tolerating and supporting this nonsense, whatever it is. And then in addition to that, as I said, we'll be back for additional videos coming up. And next episode is going to be episode 60. For the 60th episode, we will probably do nothing different than what we did on this episode. But the point is, it's 60. So there you go. That's something. Anyway, that's it for us. We'll catch you in the next one.
Bye, guys.